And we are live.
All righty. Are you kicking it to me? Am I starting or?
It's all yours.
Great. Well, thanks, Jennifer. Want to thank you for your continued leadership on the Commission on Hate Crime Response and Prevention. Thank you for shepherding our nominees through the nomination process with the Maryland General Assembly and the State Senate. I'm sure you're going to update us on that a little bit later. And thanks to everyone for joining us today in our virtual meeting. I think the last time we met was in November. So I want to also thank you for your continued work on the many issues that the Commission is looking at, and that work since November. It's great to see everyone. I think it was last time was in person, and the benefits of virtual, right? Folks from across the state are able to convene in a way that works for everyone. So thanks for joining today. Again, thanks for diligently working on the issues of the Commission. I think, we could probably say what I'm about to say every time we meet, that the Commission's work has become increasingly vital. And that's just as true today, if not more so, as we continue to see hate impacting Marylanders. Recent incidents from racist texts that were sent to students right after the November election, to the swastika flyers that were distributed in Howard County, among so many other incidents. They demonstrate that hate continues to be a pressing concern across this country, and Maryland is certainly not immune from that. These disturbing messages leave communities concerned for their safety and well-being. Unfortunately, we are likely to see more of this type of hate activity as certain groups feel emboldened by changes in the federal administration. The rhetoric, the actions of this administration foment hate. I can't say that it is solely responsible for hate activity, but certainly seems to lift the lid and almost encourages this activity. But even before the election, hate crimes in Maryland rose 103% in 2023 compared to the previous year, and we know this is likely an undercount. One of the things that the Commission is focusing on: how do we address the undercount and ensure that more people are reporting. Although state law requires law enforcement to report hate crimes and hate bias incidents, many remain unreported, and this reporting is now coupled with Marylanders feeling even more concerned about which rights will continue to be protected since the advent of the second Trump administration. The Office of the Attorney General, we remain committed to defending all Marylanders through our recently established Federal Accountability Unit. So many of you have probably heard about, reading about our Federal Accountability Unit. That unit works with the multi-state coalition of attorneys general. Together, we're 23 AGs or OAGs, and we're working to protect the rights of our respective residents, the interests of our states. And certainly for me, it's all about keeping Marylanders safe from harmful federal actions. I do encourage you to visit the OAG's website, and you'll see a Federal Action and Response tab. We have litigation updates. We have resources, including guidance for the immigrant community, the LGBTQIA plus community. Some of that we borrowed. No sense to reinvent the wheel when we've got strong advocacy groups out there that are developing a lot of guidance and know your rights. But we've posted that to amplify that on our website. Because we believe that not just through litigation, but resource development and advocacy, the Office of the Attorney General is positioned to protect and support residents of our state. So I'm pleased that all 5 committees of the commission have met recently to establish goals and action items for this year. And I know we're going to discuss those today. Remember that we recognize, I certainly do, that your expertise, experience, and contributions are invaluable and are welcomed on any committee meeting. And this allows our vital work to continue between quarterly commission meetings. We have continued our hate crime initiatives that are funded by the Department of Justice grant, including the regional hate bias forums across Maryland, in partnership with the MCCR, Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, and other local agencies. I have the privilege of attending the most recent one in Anne Arundel County. And I plan, and the commission with MCCR plans to reach every region by this year, the end of this year. These forums bring together community leaders, law enforcement, and constituents to discuss ways to combat hate crimes. The lessons that we learn during those convenings help us reassess and recalibrate strategies within state agencies and communities. We're also pleased to say that the DOJ grant continues to fund other important aspects of our work, namely the effort by the Maryland State Police to create an online training platform for law enforcement agencies. And we're excited because we're seeing progress in that area. The Maryland State Police has chosen a vendor to assist in developing and delivering that online training platform, and we look forward to developing the content of that training together. The commission will have an opportunity to provide input as that training portal is being developed and before delivery. Our first report to the General Assembly and the Department of Education was submitted in December. And we believe that it established with your help and your work, your input, a strong foundation with some key recommendations. So today we'll discuss how these fared in last session's challenging legislative environment, which I should add is probably one of the most challenging legislative sessions that I've experienced in Annapolis, and I've now had 8 + 8 + I've had well over a quarter century of experience, not continuous, but cumulative in Annapolis. This was a tough one, and I think in large part due to the tough budget environment and just the tone that it set, the mood, the atmosphere in Annapolis. It was very difficult, not only for budget, but non-budget items. But I think we laid a solid foundation. So we're excited to continue this vital work to make Maryland safe for everyone who lives here. Again, I commend all of you, commission members and partners and the public for your participation, your dedication to eliminating hate in Maryland. Again, the continued rise in hate crimes this year, particularly anti-Semitic and Islamophobic incidents, highlights the urgency of our work. So I encourage each of us to expand our efforts to report hate crimes and bias incidents. Because, notwithstanding that Maryland is the 4th most diverse state in the nation, and we still have our challenges, but yet we have our shared goal of making Maryland more welcoming for all. So with that goal in mind, I'm going to turn things over to Jennifer for an update on the commission's work, the membership, again, through the the Senate Nominations Commission process or committee process. Jennifer is going to update us on that. So thanks again, and let me turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you. I'm gonna share my screen. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to first go through a brief membership update. As y'all know, we had a number of commissioners up in front of the Senate Executive Nominations Committee this session. All 14 folks that went up in front of the committee made it through. They were recommended to the full Senate, and all 14 were approved, which was very exciting. Thank you, everybody, for working with me in this process. It's been very cool to see all of y'all go through this and get you to be full commissioners. I will note, you see the number 14 here. We are currently down one commissioner. Our office is working to fill that one vacancy, but otherwise we have a full commission. Everybody is here ready to go. We no longer have an acting commissioner at this point, which I think is really exciting. However, on the note of having everybody confirmed, commissioner terms will expire every year moving forward from now on. Terms are staggered, so we will see a handful of folks every year that will have their term expired, both those that are on appointed organizations that are able to appoint individuals, as well as our 15 members that represent different protected classes. So we will be reaching out to folks as those terms come up every year to let you know, hey, this is what's going on. This is when your term ends. It was in your appointment letter that of when your term ends. However, the one thing I really want to highlight here is that your term expiring does not exclude you from being on the commission in the future. So you can definitely reapply. You can continue to express interest, and we will continue to work with everybody to be involved with the commission. So that is a term expiring means that either A, you have to be reappointed solely by the AG, or you are recommended to the committee again, and you will go through the nomination process with advice and consent of the Senate. So that's what that looks like. We have 6 commissioner terms expiring this year. So after we get through this first round of appointments of the original 25 of y'all, we will start to see 4-year terms, which is the full term on the commission. So there's a couple of folks this year, there's a couple of folks next year and the next before we get into folks going through a full cycle of a term. But we made it through this one. We now know and have gotten to experience the full process of putting people through the Senate, and it's very exciting to have everybody on this call be a full commissioner. And on that note, legislative updates is the other end of this. Attorney General Brown mentioned already that this session was very active. There was a lot of constraints, and as such, we sadly did not see our bill make it through. We had a hearing on March 11th. I want to give a quick thank you not only to Delegate Vogel, who sponsored the bill, but also for all of the folks that testified on the bill, Cleveland Horton, Orlando Lilly, and then Ronnie Taylor from Free State Justice. As well as the numerous commissioners and non-commissioners from the general public that submitted written testimony in support. We saw a lot of support on this bill, both in person the day of. We saw a lot of written testimony. We can see how important this bill is, even though it didn't make it through crossover or pass this session. So this bill very much is going to remain vital. I think this is important for us to lay a solid foundation for addressing hate in our state.
Jennifer, let me just jump in, and maybe for the benefit of those who are not familiar with 1452, if you could just sort of, outline the bill briefly.
Absolutely. So 1452 was the bill that contained both of our recommendations. They put together the recommendation to define hate bias incident, as was laid out in our report, as well as to update the definition of sexual orientation. So we were looking to clarify the definition of hate bias incident so that it's actually stated, the title of what it is stated fully within the law, and provide a legal definition where one does not currently exist, based off of our research from other states, as well as the Maryland Coordination and Analysis Center's definition that they use every year to put together the annual report on the state of hate in Maryland. And then updating the definition of sexual orientation was the other part of this bill, so that we could have a definition that would grow with language and how people understand their identity, rather than listing off a handful of identities and potentially leaving somebody out. So those were our 2 recommendations that came out of the commission's work last year. and that Delegate Vogel sponsored the bill for this year.
I think with a well-considered, thoughtful advocacy and engagement strategy leading up to the session in 2026, we should be successful. The bill came out of a recommendation from the commission, as Jennifer mentioned, that was in the report, and with all the activity in the General Assembly this year, it became clear that we did not get an early enough start to kind of socialize it. Maybe that's not the right term, although I think for some it is, and just to lay the necessary groundwork to get this done. But it, as Jennifer mentioned, remains vital, and we're confident that we can get this done next session.
Absolutely. And it's like you're talking about, A.G. Brown, there we continue to see like the need for this, not only in our own experience as commissioners, as the Office of the Attorney General. We see this in our forums where people, the general public is often very much not aware that what a hate bias incident is. It remains unknown and can be really confusing. And people don't realize they should report it. So laying that foundation in the law, like we recommended, will be really helpful in having a place to point to in the future. And law enforcement continues to face the issue of they know that this is something that exists, but they don't necessarily have a solid legal foundation to turn to every time in getting these reports and addressing these reports. So our forums with interacting with the general public continue to support the need for this. And we also see it in people contacting the portal. So these are calls per month. There's a huge drop on April 1st because I do not have April numbers in here, as April is not over. But the blue line shows the beginning of our data for the hate crimes hotline, and the portal goes live on June 6th of 2024, which is that huge jump. And then we just continue to see an ongoing use of people reaching out to us, trying to figure out who they need to contact to report hate incidents and have their the incident addressed, have it reflected, and find the support that they need. And I will not go to the next slide. We're seeing this across counties of Maryland. I was looking at this the other day. Something that you notice when you look at the annual report is not every county reports every year. But something I noticed, having a couple of years of data here now, with the blue being 2023, the orange being 24, and the green being 2025, we're seeing reports from every county. We're also seeing, much like we see in the annual report, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel, Baltimore County, Baltimore City as well. We're seeing a lot of reports from very similar areas. We also, and you will notice that here there is no mention of counties of calls and points of contact that do not indicate where they are, because it very much ruins the graph, because for 2024 there was about 100 people that did not indicate where they were, and then you can't see the rest of the data. But I also try to mark where out-of-state calls come in. We get a couple of folks that are looking for assistance but happen to be outside of the state of Maryland. And when they're looking for assistance, our portal or our hotline comes up. So we continue to see this growing need to address incidents of hate, not only across time, but across our state. So those are the updates I have around our own recommendations, the continued support we're seeing through our interactions with the public, the forum, the portal, and the hotline. This recommendation, like we've said a couple of times now, is something that we're going to continue to push for and start earlier on for the next session so that we can get it through. And then, as I was watching legislative session, and as I'm sure many others will, there's a couple of bills that we could start seeing potential future recommendations come out of. So these are just a brief overview of a handful of bills, whether that is on the education front in recommendations for all institutions of higher education to create policies to address racial, ethnic, and religious violence, harassment, and intimidation. There's also bills that are discussing anti-discrimination and anti-bullying policies for all schools. So that includes K through 12, where we can start to look to address these incidents at a younger age so that folks can learn how to interact best with their peers, with their classmates, and ensuring that our schools are a safe place for all students that go there. And then finally, attempts to address and define deep fakes made with artificial intelligence, attempts to address new technology as we're seeing it, as we've seen it come up in our state. These are just a handful of things that I've noticed so far that we may look to in the future. So just a quick highlight of that I'm certain will come up in future committee meetings for further discussion so that we can not only show up at the end of this year with the recommendations we've already made, but continue to develop further recommendations through the committee's work. And now, speaking of all of the committees, I would like to go through with all of the committee chairs and have a chance to update on the things that y'all are doing, the things that we have heard.
Before we do that, can we open up your to the group? Any conversations, questions, discussion around what you presented, and certainly anything that may be relevant or pertain to my opening remarks. Let's do that. So we're taking a few kind of natural breaks in the and get some interaction here.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that we didn't do, which it was my responsibility. I apologize. We didn't introduce one another. We would have normally done that if we were in a room. There's no reason not to do it here. The only challenge is people always wonder, who's next. And I could say let's do alphabetical order, but it'd be like, oh, wait a second, I don't know where I am in that order. But let me. Can you show the full screen of everybody? Do you know how to do? I mean, I'm sure you know how to do it. You're a manager. I just see you on the screen. How do we see everybody? Or is that something I need? Nah, I think that's probably something I need to do. Gallery. I'm sorry. So let me call the name and then just, please introduce yourself. I'll just, if folks are okay with that, and I'm just going to go in no particular order other than how I see you on my screen. So I see Jennifer and myself. And so Sylvia Royster.
There you go. Good morning, everybody. Yes, Sylvia Royster. I am the Director of Educational Partnerships at the College of Southern Maryland. Excuse me. Glad to be here. Happy Thursday.
Son just got his AAS at College of Southern Maryland, Emergency Medical Services. He's now a nationally certified paramedic. Thank you. Zanita.
Good morning, everyone. Zanita Hurley. I am newly appointed Deputy Attorney General in the Office of the Attorney General, but still overseeing our equity policy and engagement work.
Please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Louise Flanahan. I'm the Director of Policy within the Office of Equity Policy and Engagement at the Office of the Attorney General.
Dominique.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dominique Flowers. I'm a staff attorney with the Pro Bono Research Center of Maryland, and I serve as one of the co-chairs for the Schools Committee, and I'm happy to be here.
Adelaide.
Hi, my name is Adila, and I am with the Community Engagement Committee, and I am one of the co-chairs as well. Happy to be here.
I apologize for the mispronunciation.
No worries.
Katie.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Katie O'Malley from the Women's Law Center, and I am on the committee for addressing hate in the schools. Good to see everyone.
Jennifer Brown.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Brown. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for On Our Own of Maryland, which is a behavioral health advocacy and education organization.
Yolanda?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Yolanda Sonia. I'm the Deputy Director at the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. I sit on this commission on behalf of MARA, the Maryland Association of Human Rights Agencies, and I am also the co-chair of the Community Engagement Committee. You will hear introduction from Asha, but Asha will be taking my place as the representative for MARA after this meeting.
All right. Lan?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lan Xu. I'm the chair of Howard County Asian American and Pacific Islander Commission, and I sit on the committee to address hate in schools. Good to be here.
Cleveland?
Good morning, everybody. Cleveland Horton, Executive Director for the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, and I am also the co-chair for the Law Enforcement Subcommittee. So happy Friday Eve, everybody.
Kirsten?
Good afternoon. I'm Kirsten Downs, or good morning. I'm Kirsten Downs. I'm the Director of Systemic Reform at the Public Defender's Office. I'm on the Restorative Justice Committee, and I'm here to advocate on behalf of those unhoused.
Bishop Allison?
Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. Bishop Allison Abrams, pastor and founder of Empowerment Liberation Cathedral. And I'm just glad to be here and glad to have the opportunity to work with all of you.
Oliver?
Good morning, everybody. Jodiver Singh. I'm Community Engagement Liaison for the Maryland, DC, and Virginia region for the Sikh Coalition, and I'm on the Law Enforcement Subcommittee.
Brian?
Good morning, everyone. Kate Bryan, the Executive Director of the Maryland Center for School Safety, and I'm the co-chair of the Schools Committee.
Lily? You're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Oh yeah, I'm Orlando Lilly, the Superintendent of Natural Resources Police, representing the Maryland Chiefs of Police.
Thanks a lot, Superintendent. Dave Curry?
Hello, everyone. I apologize for not having a camera. In my space, we don't have any cameras. My name is Dave Curry. I'm a senior criminal intelligence analyst with the Maryland State Police. I was the primary author of the previous year's hate bias report. I'm also a branch chief within MCAC, and I am representing Director Engel today.
Thank you, Dave. Carissa?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Carissa Mattern. Happy to say that I just accepted a promotion within the Office of Civil Rights or Equity and Civil Rights. I should probably get that right by now. I'm now a policy analyst for the Police Accountability Division and their police accountability boards. And I am, for the commission, I am chair of the Online and Cyberbullying Committee. Thank you.
Gabriel?
Good morning, everybody. Gabriel Moreno. I sit on the Community Engagement Committee. I am the director of Luminous Network, an immigration nonprofit located in Howard County.
Michael Gray?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Gray. I'm policy advisor and consultant with NAMI Maryland. That's the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and I'm on the Online and Cyberbullying Committee.
Ama?
Good morning, everyone. The lighting is horrible. That's why I had my camera off. But good morning, everyone. I'm the legal director at CASA, based here in Maryland, nonprofit organization that advocates for Black, Brown, immigrant, and Indigenous communities. Thank you for having me. And I sit on the Restorative Justice Committee.
And last but not least, Asha.
Good morning, and thank you. I'm Asha Smith. I'm the Director of Equity and Human Rights for Anne Arundel County, and I am here in my capacity as Secretary of the Maryland Association of Human Rights Agencies.
All righty. So thank you, everyone, for introducing yourselves and again for your presence and participation on the commission and here today. So we can open it up if there's any questions or comments on what Jennifer has recently presented, and after that we'll go. Jennifer, take us to the next item. But anybody, we can do it like show of hands, and if you don't know the hand feature, just jump in. Okay. Oh, Katie O'Malley.
Thanks, A.G. Brown and Jennifer. I'm just wondering, did you find to be the biggest hurdles in trying to get the bill passed, 1452? Did you get any feedback on what they were having problems with? Was it the definition of, sexual orientation, or was it more the definition of what a hate bias crime is?
So we're still figuring out exactly if there were any hangups along the way. I will say that originally we were scheduled for an earlier day to do our bill hearing. It got rescheduled. Everything that day got rescheduled, not just us. So part of this was definitely timing. We got scheduled much closer to crossover date. So introducing this bill earlier next year will definitely help. We're looking to see if there's any other things that were an issue, if there's anything we can do better next time, but that is one thing that I do want to highlight.
Well, I'd love to help next year if you need it. So just let me know.
Thank you, Katie, for that. We'll need all the help we can. I do think that on the definition of hate bias incident, I think we can find a really strong ally, and it may take a little sort of coaching and work with law enforcement, because law enforcement has a real interest, as we all do, but particularly so on defining hate bias incident, and then eventually, because I don't think that was in the bill this year, recommending a reporting a process for hate bias incidents, because as we have heard from our law enforcement partners, they get overwhelmed with a lot of reporting on hate bias incidents, and they're really in the business of crime and not non-criminal incidents. So I think we can find real, strong partners among law enforcement on that piece. But as Jennifer mentioned, it was a late hearing, so we didn't get a lot of feedback. And also one of the things that we'll need to do this year is, not only the advocacy groups, but the caucuses within the General Assembly, and really encouraging them to and the LGBTQI plus caucus should be involved. I think the Latino caucus, the other affinity caucuses like the CBC, and even the Women's Caucus. I mean, to have one or more of them make this bill their own, so that's part of the strategy, and hopefully we'll be successful there. Next, we have two hands up. Adelaide, I know I'm mispronouncing.
No worries.
I'm sorry.
So I guess from my perspective, this year we had it introduced in the House, and then we're going to attempt to reintroduce it next year. Do we think we have interest from the Senate side so that we can introduce a Senate bill as well? That way, if it passes the House, there's more chances of it passing the Senate as well.
I think so. I really do. I think there are advocates, champions in the Senate as well. And you make a good point. I mean, cross-filing just helps the odds of it getting, a good hearing. One of the two at least makes crossover. So that is part of the strategy to get having this cross-filed.
Okay.
Sylvia?
Yes, looking at the data that Jennifer shared and some of the conversation around legislation, is there any analysis or any conversation around hate bias incident reporting with students in higher education? Because there's a lot of information going on in media around that particular population right now in the state of Maryland. And I did not know if there was any work or any analysis of data around that particular population right now, especially around restorative justice. So curious if that is a point of interest with the Attorney General's office, or possibly maybe this commission moving forward? I'm just curious, Jennifer, if that's a conversation that's being discussed at this point, on the legislative side or on the data side?
I know there was a couple of bills around restorative justice this year for students that I would like to go back and look at, and I think would be great for the different committees to take a glance at and see if those would fit well with our recommendations. I'm also on the data side very interested when we see the new report come out this October. I know that a lot of times it highlights where things take place as well as the age groups that are impacted. And I think that would also be really helpful for us to look at. But yes, between the restorative justice and the addressing schools committees, I think that is definitely something that could be looked at because college campuses are definitely impacted by everything going on. And also in much closer quarters than the rest of society tends to be in day to day because they all live together.
I really appreciate you saying that. And one point to consider with the K-16, those cross collaborations with our high schools and our community college and our four-year institutions, those would be conversations worth expanding. So very helpful. Thank you.
So that raising that, Sylvia. Dave Curry, I don't want to put you on the spot. And it may be something where, you and your colleagues at MCAT can get back to us on. But my recollection was when we saw that high number in Prince George's County, when I was at one of the hate crime forums, that high number was driven in large part by reporting at College Park. And it was my recollection, my understanding that it was at the University of Maryland College Park. And I guess the question is, as we collect data around the state, do we identify whether that the data in any county is from at a college campus?
Yes, that data is definitely tabulated and gathered by both the location type, which is so for those don't this is going into the weeds a little bit, but when a hate bias incident comes to the state police, it has to be identified based on location, whether it's residence or whether it is at a grocery store or something. And those locations are codified in a specific series of like categories. One of which is K through 12 schools and then higher education schools. So that can be sorted based on that. And also, for those that don't know, I believe all public universities have a law enforcement agency that is affiliated with it. So to your point, sir, the hate bias incidents that reported on College Park were reported by the College Park Police Department. So that is another way to sort it, but it's not like Goucher College, I don't believe has a police department. So it's kind of hit or miss. So, and again, this is getting really granular, but there is a way to look at it from both the law enforcement agency that is assigned to that university or higher education, as well as the specific location for higher education. I'd also like to point out that in a completely separate divergent data set, there is something called the Clery Act that it requires crime of any kind to be reported to the Department of Education. And that crime can also include hate crime as well.
Right. Thanks, Dave. Zanita?
Yes, thank you, AG. I wanted to follow up on Sylvia's point. One of the reasons we thought it made sense to show you some of the legislation that was attempted this session was particularly the focus on hate activity in higher education, was that bill did not pass. And so I think that's an area that's right for this body to consider taking up in terms of some best practices or recommendations for action actions that higher education institutions can take to combat hate activity. And I know we have a committee that's focused on schools, and maybe at least primarily the work had been focused on K through 12, but I think it's, that's something that the committee can consider, is whether they'd be willing to expand and incorporate best practices and research in the higher education, knowing that the legislature is interested in that. And we do have the data from Dave's shop, and from our and anecdotally and from the media that is a place where we do need to focus in terms of combating hate. So,
all right, thank you. Any more discussion? Okay, I don't see any. Anybody? I don't see a hand. Just jump in if you.
Bishop Abrams.
Yes.
Yep.
A.G. Brown, you mentioned next year the LGBT caucus could be involved. So as one from the LGBT community and Prince George's County, do you have in mind any particular caucus? Because as a representative from the LGBT community, I would be happy to, be the one to engage them or try to get them on board early on. So I'm just trying to find out that you have anyone in mind.
All of the above, all of them. You may recall on, I forget which issue this session, but there were one, if not more, issues where all of the caucus came together. It was very powerful, and made a statement in support. And maybe someone can help me. I don't remember what the issue was. And so I would say we want to make an effort with all of them. And we can, we have a time to plan and strategize, identify specific members of the caucus, if not like the chairs of the caucus, who we can reach out to, try to get in front of the caucuses, get in front of some of the members between now and the fall, so we can kind of build this coalition.
Thank you so much.
All right, Jennifer.
before Jennifer goes in, there was the second look at that all the caucuses got behind. Yep, and that did pass.
Cool. So on that note, I'm gonna pass it on a bit to our committee chairs so that we can hear from everybody. I don't believe we've had a chance before for the committees to highlight the work they've been doing. So I'm going to go down the list in alphabetical order. And despite the fact that I call it the Schools Committee, it is the Addressing Hate in Schools Committee, which means that it will, I'm going to hand it over to our two co-chairs first, from Dominique Flowers and Kate Bryan, to provide any updates they would like to share from the Addressing Hate in Schools Committee.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, everybody. I'm Dominique Flowers. I can get the ball rolling in terms of our discussion. So since the last meeting where we all met together in November and December, this Hate in Schools Committee, Hate Crime in Schools Committee, sorry. We've met 2 times in January and March. And we focused on 3 primary issues: recommended training for teachers to combat hate crime, reporting challenges, best practices for training for school resource officers, and also we took a look at some of the bills that were coming up during session that center on some of our activity. And then we looked at focus areas in terms of reporting. So reporting, we discussed the lack of data and consistency in reporting, typically among law enforcement agencies, which may identifying trends or issues difficult to kind of figure out. And we also looked at the lack of inconsistency in reporting that was seen in terms of hate incidents and bullying. And so at our January meeting, we discussed next steps, surrounding these issues. And one avenue we were proposed was to take a look at the bullying and harassment incident forms, which could be a way to see if some of this information can be shared more broadly to create a more robust report for these incidents. We also addressed anonymous reporting in schools and explored the MSCC-run statewide reporting system, which Kate can kind of talk more about on. And we also realized that instead of recreating the wheel when it came to reporting, why not look at other public school systems across the state and the country to see how they handled hate incidents and what their policies were regarding local law enforcement. So in our own backyard, Montgomery County was identified as one of the more robust reporting jurisdictions, where they had a very process in terms of how they reported hate crimes between the code of conduct and law enforcement. We also looked at other states, and particularly at Oregon, which had a very unique model when it came to reporting hate crime. And we decided at our March meeting, we were looking to what Oregon did to address hate crime bias incidents. And then also we discussed bills at the January meeting, but I'll refer that to my colleagues. March meeting, we reconvened and we were provided an update on how what was available online. We found out that Oregon didn't share whole numbers for incidents per year currently. Instead, they collected it from a variety of sources and had several different numbers, and that's how their reporting process was calculated. And we also noted that their report mentions that schools might report an event that occurred, wasn't included in the report because the whole district didn't report it. So we kind of discussed some of those indications. And so I mentioned one of our focuses both during the January and March meeting were training. And so we wanted to explore some of the training in local school systems in terms of how school systems implemented training with school resource officers and with teachers. An individual did give a training on how that process worked. There was a law enforcement officer, and Jennifer, I can't remember his name or what agency he was. I apologize. I think it was the Maryland State Police. But he gave a very good training on how these incidents are reported statewide and some of the practices that local schools, school jurisdictions implement in terms of training. And one suggestion was to contact the Public Justice Center in Baltimore because they apparently had a training video that they utilized. And I think the previous Schools Commission on Hate Crimes suggested this approach. And I actually took the initiative to contact the Public Justice Center to see what their process was in terms of their training regarding hate crime reporting and hate bias incidents. I haven't heard back from them yet, so I'm hopeful that they'll get back to me. Over to my colleague, Kate.
Thank you. Yeah, so in addition to the things we already mentioned, we have members of the committee who are going to be meeting with Department of Education to have conversations about some of the work that they're doing, sort of their curriculum development, or at least curriculum requirements for educators in public schools in the state. As Dominique mentioned, so our office provides training for all the school resource officers and security employees in the state, and one component of that is training on hate crimes and hate bias incidents. Additionally, Dominique mentioned the importance of anonymous reporting. So each school system in the state has mechanisms for students to report, ideally to a trusted adult. But some of the school systems also have anonymous reporting systems. And for those that don't, our office also manages Safe Schools Maryland, which is available statewide to every public and private school in the state. And hate crimes and hate bias incidents are one of the things that individuals can report to our system. So we've had pretty robust discussions. You know, we've realized that our schools are really a reflection of their community. So if we can teach our children and teach the students in our schools and the staff how to support them to recognize hate, report hate, you know, we are going to be moving the state forward in a way that will provide really our students and our staff a better way to communicate with each other, a better way to learn, because there's nothing worse than our kids being in schools and being subject to hate and having to go through a day living with that. And so we get reports all the time, and it's disheartening that we continue to see this impacting our kids in our schools. So I'm really
Zanita?
Thanks, Jennifer. I just wanted to jump in and remind the Attorney General that he has an 11 o'clock meeting and that he had asked me to, as his chair designee, to step in and be the service chair for the remainder of today's meeting. So I see we're nearing the 11 o'clock hour, so just wanted to interrupt with that. Thanks.
For that reminder. I can't believe 11 o'clock's here already. So you are in perhaps even better hands now with Zanita having the gavel and Jennifer than you were an hour ago. With that, let me say again, thanks to the committee chair. Sorry, I'm not able to hear all of your presentations and the great things that you're working on. I'll get the back brief from my team and have a wonderful weekend on what Cleveland identified as the what is it, the eve of Friday, or the penultimate day before the weekend. Okay, take care, everybody.
So I will hand it over to our community engagement co-chairs, Adelia and Yolanda.
Yolanda, you want to go first?
No, I'll let you go, Adelia, and then I'll jump in after you.
Okay.
You go.
Okay. From our perspective, we've focused on a couple of different areas. The pamphlet had already been developed when we started meeting. So we finalized some of the content over there, made sure all the information there was accurate. And we have a final pamphlet that can be shared across everywhere, right? So it has places where we want people to report. It has the link to the portal as well, and we want people to come here. The second one was getting the message across so that we can start sharing it across our networks, for lack of a better term, like a soft launch, where we're giving it to the entities that we work with that message, and kind of promoting the flyer so that is out there. Our second phase is going to be to reach out to other organizations like libraries and schools and stuff like that, so that they can share that information as well. Another area that we focused on is the resource page. So on our commission page, we do have a place with a bunch of different resources in Maryland that Jennifer Frederick uses when she gets calls from these various people reporting hate incidents. So that is a list that she had compiled over time. So we're trying to reach out to some of those entities and make sure they're aware that we are sending people to them. I think the frustration some of the people are always going to have is, what next? So if we send them to a resource and that resource is not ready to handle that call, or we're sending them to the wrong department, then that's on us. So we are trying to validate by calling, by reaching out to the various resources that are listed on that resource page, so to make sure that those resources are ready at that. And again, some of the data that Jennifer Frederick shared today, we are starting to look at that because we're very curious in terms of who is reporting and so on and so forth. So in our meetings, we do look at some of those reports that Jennifer might be getting via the portal to see if we're seeing trends. As we see stuff happening outside, are people actually coming to the portal as well? One thing that we found out recently in our April meeting, and I think we were aware of it, but it was kind of brought home to us, was that only the police reports make it to that final report. So a lot of times, if the hate bias incident is not being reported to the police, it's never going to show up in the report, right? It's just if the data is not there. So one of the things that I guess we need to, and we've been talking about it off and on, but we need to explore further as a committee is to see if there's a way for the report to be augmented so that we can see reports from some of the other organizations that might be collecting data, not just the police. So I know that's a big change, so we need to kind of flesh that out, think about that. But even if we're adding it as an addendum or as a second report, at least we'll see the data that is missing. Going back to Montgomery County, because everybody has seen that Montgomery County reports extremely well because we're getting a lot of data through there. Again, some of the marginalized communities that might be experiencing hate are missing from that data. So they're either not reporting to the police or for whatever reason, that data is not getting captured. So that's one of the reasons we're trying to explore, well, if they're not comfortable because they're already marginalized, not reporting to the police, is there a way to get those reports from other entities as well? And then one of the new things that we found out is that Montgomery County has a new portal for being able to collect data as well. It is very new as of November, so we will be learning more about that to see if that is something that can be used across different counties as well. So, Yolanda?
Thank you. And that was pretty comprehensive. I will just add that we meet on a monthly basis. We were at the beginning of the term, I think starting back, when did we start? Back in September?
Yeah.
We were meeting bi-weekly, and we just recently started meeting monthly. And so one of the things as well we find is that our committee as community engagement also spans almost across all of the other committees. And so we were talking about ways where there are natural partnerships between the community engagement and all of our other committees. I did want to also just recognize to the other committee members, so Jennifer Brown, Gabe Morano, Deb Miller, I don't think Deb is on today, are also on this committee. And one other thing that I wanted to just add to all of the information that Adelia provided was that there was a discussion at our meeting on Tuesday about possibly creating a video. We had a speaker, and we've had a few speakers come and speak to our committee, but we had a lieutenant from Montgomery County that came and spoke, and it was actually it was his suggestion about having almost a PSA video, almost like a We Are the World video for those old enough to know the We Are the World song and video that occurred, but showing the many faces of people and how hate impacts people, and making it, humanizing the fact that when this is done, that it actually does hurt people, and like kind of doing a PSA and just showing many faces and many communities. So it was a suggestion that was also made. So that is, Adelia, I don't know if anything from what I said sparked anything, but otherwise I think we are looking for ways to collaborate with the other committees.
Yes, absolutely. We definitely want to collaborate because oftentimes we might have questions about schools. We have lots of questions regarding law enforcement. So we haven't had a chance to start going to some of those meetings, but we welcome any collaborations. If you need anything from us, we're here to help.
Anita.
Thank you. I just wanted to, knowing that this is Yolanda's last meeting, I think just wanted to thank you so much for your leadership and engagement. We really appreciate it. Obviously, you know, you guys are a very active committee, and I know that's due in large part to your leadership. And so I just wanted to go on record and just thank you. You will be missed, and I hope that you continue to participate in some way, either, you know, behind the scenes and working with your team, or, you know, attending meetings as your schedule allows, and just keeping abreast of this work and continuing to contribute to it. So thank you.
Thank you, Zanita, for saying that. And I did commit to Jennifer that even though I can't continue as the co-chair of the Community Engagement Committee, that I will stay on the committee. And I will still be involved, as this work is important. And I do plan to still remain involved.
Excellent,
Thank
excellent.
you.
And then the other thing, and this is not to put our commissioner on the spot, but I fear that we're continuing to mispronounce Commissioner Sharif's name. Is that as somebody who has one of those names that's regularly mispronounced, if you would please just say it again so we could try to do better.
No worries. It's actually spelt differently, and I kind of blame my parents, so I'll just leave it at that. But it's Adila. So
Adila. Okay.
yes.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you. And then I believe only one of our co-chairs is on from the Law Enforcement Committee. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Cleveland. The other co-chair is Carmen Jackson. I don't believe she's with us today. So all yours, Cleveland.
Hello, everybody again. I don't know how I'm going to beat the "We Are the World" comment from the last committee. So, but I will do my best. I will also say, even though this is Yolanda's quote unquote last day, I will remind Zanita and Jennifer that I think my term is nearing expiration. So I probably would say that you all should expect to see Yolanda back very soon as a representative of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. So she gone but not forgotten, but she will be back very shortly. So I just wanted to put that out there as well. So moving on to our law enforcement subcommittee report. We've really been trying to tackle three main things. One of the main things that we've been talking about as a committee is really how do we set expectations when we talk about reporting for hate bias and hate crimes, specifically around hate bias incidents, because we do recognize, especially as we think about the conversations that we've been having in our hate bias and hate crime forums, that different locales report hate bias and hate crimes differently. Even as we've talked on this call, right, that how Montgomery County has a very robust and aggressive reporting system. And sometimes I think whether Montgomery County is really that aggressive or whether the other counties are just less aggressive, right? So sometimes when you have a county that stands out, we really have to decide whether that county is really going above and beyond or everybody else is just doing so below the bar, right? But we do want to give kudos to Montgomery County in reference to where they are, but really trying to figure out how do we kind of level set the expectations across the board from a law enforcement perspective in reference to what their requirements are from a reporting standpoint. Some of the conversations that we've had with law enforcement have been very interesting, to say the least, in reference to the thoughts behind how they report hate bias incidents, what are considered hate bias incidents, and things of that nature. So our committee has really been thinking about how to reach out to the chiefs of police and the sheriff's associations to have that conversation around articulating consistent expectations and requirements as it pertains to the reporting of hate bias and hate crimes throughout the state. We've also been talking about creating a resource for law enforcement to be able to hand out to the public. So if there are hate bias or hate crimes, some sort of resource or pamphlet or brochure to hand out to talk about process, to talk about what you should expect through the process and resources as we continue to move forward, because there are typically more questions than answers when individuals report hate bias and hate crimes incidents as to what's the next steps, what's the follow-up, what should folks expect in terms of follow-up. So we are working on trying to create that resource for law enforcement to be able to provide out to the public. The last thing that we've really been focusing on is kind of the relationship between law enforcement and the school systems as it pertains to from a reporting standpoint. We know that based off of the report that Dave Curry and his team do every year in reference to hate bias and hate crimes, we know that the highest number of hate crimes and hate bias is happening in our K-12 school systems, and we want to make sure that the relationship is there from a law enforcement and our school system side to make sure that the appropriate reporting and follow-up is being done in that area as well. So those are the three main things that our committee has been really focusing on in terms of how we move forward. But I think just listening to some of the reports earlier too, I think that we also have to think about as a commission is how do we ensure that we are communicating and engaging each other, I guess, at a higher level, because we don't want like 5 different committees reaching out to law enforcement, asking for different things, right? If there's an opportunity for us to, and I guess, engage each other a little better so that we're maybe making one request with all the different items that we need, I think we may get a better response. And the same thing with the school systems, because I think most of our activities are probably centered around law enforcement and the school systems. And how do we kind of collaborate better so that we're not probably reaching out to the same individuals multiple times with different people, asking for different information, and there's a way for us to kind of consolidate those requests. I think there's an opportunity for us to get a more efficient response to the information that we need from these entities. So I'd just like to see us think about, as a commission moving forward, how do we kind of better collaborate? It seems like a lot of us are the work that we're doing is kind of intersecting with each other. And how do we just make sure that we aren't kind of creating duplicate work as we continue to move forward? So I did like the idea that the last committee talked about around the brochure that they're creating. And I was thinking about, all right, well, we're also trying to create this resource for law enforcement to hand out to the public. If there's a way for us to create some synergy around the efforts that we're doing, it could be maybe the same document so that we're not duplicating efforts as we continue to move forward.
I have a few responses to that, Cleveland. Thank you for that report out. One is, we do benefit from having representatives from the Chiefs and Sheriffs Association on this commission. And so I think, we should use them as a resource to engage multiple agencies broadly. Maybe they could assist us in surveying their members. And I do agree with you that it makes most sense for us to work across all committees so that we can, to the extent that we're seeking information in the form of maybe a survey, get a sense from agencies on multiple issues, that we try to gather that all now so we're not reaching out to them, over and over again. So I think that's, Jennifer, if you could give some thought, maybe reach out to all the co-chairs and ask whose work has led them to have questions for agencies, so we can develop sort of like a survey, a list of questions that we'd like pushed out to all of our police agencies and our sheriffs. And then I think they would appreciate that we're not, hitting them with a bunch of separate requests. So thank you for that. And then on the, what was, I lost my train of thought. It had to do with, reminded me of your update reminded me of this issue around school resource officers, and how we want to get more information about the hate activity that's happening in schools, but we also want to be cautious not to unnecessarily involve law enforcement in, responding to certain activity in our schools that are better handled administratively. And so is your committee also thinking about how to balance those sometimes competing interests, seeing as that now the hate bias activity is currently reported through law enforcement up to the state?
Well, yeah, I think we talked about that. I think one of the things that we've also talked about is the fact that every locale is different, right? Some locales have school resource officers, some don't. So it is important for us to really figure out what's the relationship for getting the information so the information makes its way to the report from a reporting standpoint. So for us, it was less about, I guess, the legal aspect with the individuals involved, more about how do we ensure that we're able to get the information, right? Because the information is still important. So trying to really balance that piece of it, but recognizing the fact that it's still important for us to be able to get the information in reference to hate bias and hate crimes incidents that are happening within schools, but also making sure that we are managing the legal ramifications of some of those reports for the students involved. So it's kind of trying to balance it and determine which one is the priority, right? Moving forward. So is the information that we need to recognize and understand the issues that are happening in the schools more important than because I think it really is the response or the legal ramifications is all about how we respond to it, how the school responds to it, how law enforcement responds to it. But we do recognize that it's highly important for us to at least minimally have access to the information so that we can deploy resources, right? So if we recognize that in a school system, there's a high level of hate bias around a particular segment of our community, then that's important information for us to have so that we can then disseminate resources to be able to address that, whether it's training, whether it's, organizations reaching out and providing support to the schools to make sure that the students involved feel supported throughout the process. So those are the things that we're trying to work through and consider as we talk about these issues.
Thank you. This discussion dovetails with the Attorney General's concern or question about who is best suited to receive the hate bias incident data in the first instance. And I think that when this came up a couple of meetings back, we assigned, was it the Restorative Practices Committee to take this issue up as sort of like identifying alternate resources to report hate bias incidents to, recognizing that law enforcement, they investigate and prosecute crimes. That's what they know. And so maybe they are better resources to receive reports of hate bias incidents. So maybe that's a good segue to the Restorative Practices Committee. And just, can you confirm for me whether you all had that on your agenda to look into?
I can speak to that. We hadn't received that directive yet. I can talk with Jenna, but I think that would be a really great segue, connection to our focus moving forward. And I'll share that report out.
I see Adila has her hand up, but just so to close the loop, yes, please take that issue up, because that is one that the Attorney General does want us to take on. And ideally, maybe we could expand our legislative recommendation to incorporate a change in the law around who those, not just defining hate bias incidents, but also speaking to who those incidents should be reported to. Adila?
I think too, just to add on to that too, Zanita, I think part of when we talked about this before, at least based off of my recollection, which is sometimes sketchy, I'm not as young as I used to be, but we talked about the fact that so many different organizations are also reporting hate bias issues, right? And how do we try to figure out how are we consolidating all this information, because we know that Dave and his team is only getting a certain segment of the information. There are a number of organizations who also receive reports of hate bias and hate crimes that are not included in the report that Dave and his team gets, and trying to figure out how do we create a system where all the data, regardless of who it's being reported to, is being funneled into one system so that the aggregate data is more accurate based off of everything that's happening, because we do have a large segment of information that is not making its way to the official hate bias and hate crimes report. And I think even if, some of the data is going to the Restorative Practices Committee or whatever it is, I think we just have to figure out how is all of that information going to be consolidated and get into the official hands of whether it's Dave and his team or whoever it is, so that it gets its way into the official report, so that when we're taking a look at the report and trying to allocate resources, we are taking a look at all of the information that we know is out there, because I think that makes us to be able to better respond to hate crimes and hate biases throughout the state.
And can I say, you have so many great ideas to contribute to this. It may be that the Law Enforcement and Restorative Practice Committee could have a joint meeting to focus on this particular issue. And that way you could have, all the different perspectives at the table. I think Adila and then Sylvia.
So a couple of things. When you're doing this joint committee, please include the community engagement committee as well, because we've been talking about it. This is one of the things that we are very, very passionate about in terms of not losing that data. So creating a joint, consolidated report and one portal, maybe down in the future, but from an alpha perspective, just collecting the information from all the different entities and having it in one place might be pretty powerful and might not require a lot of resources and work. The reason I wanted to raise the hand was one, to kind of give a shout out to Jennifer Frederick, because we pestered her early on to creating a place where all our documents are. So when we're talking about collaboration, we do have a spot where all of our committee meetings are. Everybody, after some issues, all of us have access to it now, and we can share data there. The one open item that I really do want us to think about was emails sometimes do get lost. However, if we have another forum, whether it's a Teams channel, we already agreed WhatsApp is not the right channel. If there was a way that we could talk in a chat forum across the commission, it might be very helpful, because we might be able to ask a question right there and get a faster response, as opposed to trying to figure out, hey, should I send an email to such and such committee? It might help us gel better with each other. Just wanted to kind of throw it out there.
Okay, we'll look into that and see what we could come up with that might work. I think the only caution is the entire commission can't conduct its business outside of public meetings, to comport with the Open Meetings Act. But we'll see what we can, we can obviously talk to each other. Yeah, so
it's more for talking. The rest of the stuff is still in a public. We have our meeting notes and everything like that. This is more of a not formalized. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I understand, and we'll put our heads together and see what we could come up with. To your point on the community engagement committee also having an interest, I think where this is headed, and I've done this with other commissions, is sort of creating a work group that is focused on this issue and opening it up to all commissioners who have an interest. And then based on the interest and the number of commissioners who participate, we can evaluate whether we think it has to, be a open meeting with notice, because there's so much involvement. But let's just do that, because this is a big one. It would represent a significant change in how the state handles hate bias incidents. And so I think we should have as many people who are interested in participating, being able to sit at the table and help us develop a recommendation. So thank you. Sylvia, were you next? And then Yolanda.
Yes, really quick, to Cleveland's point about the reporting part, and Zanita, to that, what you just mentioned, I would be very interested. Two things. One, I've been in public education for now 27 years, and I've been on the leadership central services side. For Cleveland, I would encourage, if you haven't already, to do a deep dive on the research side of data reporting around safety, data, and discipline. You're going to be able to find some policy information that's going to give you some guidance for implications for when school districts report discipline data as it connects to state funding implications. So there may be some information there that you really might want to look at that will inform next steps for your committee. And so just giving you some information that will help you with the work of your committee.
Thank you. Yolanda?
And I'm also following up on the statement that Cleveland made about the additional reporting. And I know that was mentioned in our report. One of the things that we talked about was the fact that law enforcement has to be the one to do it. And one of the questions that we had was whether or not certain groups can be, like, if there could be a comprehensive training that can be done, so there can be other groups, other entities that could take these, the HBI, the incident reports, because some people are more comfortable going to those groups. They have a relationship, and whether or not that could happen. I think what was mentioned to us was that I guess it would have to be incorporated into the law. And so whether or not legislation would need to be introduced and figure out how to roll that out. And so I think that's a discussion, but I know a number of different groups have their own portals where they're receiving numbers, and the numbers are not being reflected in this annual report. Even though we know it's happening and we have other data, it's not being reported on a statewide. in the statewide report. So if there's a way we can continue to build on that and find out if legislative measures need to be taken and what we need to do to accomplish that.
Thank you. That sounds like a perfect topic for this new work groups discussion. And since your boss is not letting you leave, I hope to see you join that work group as well.
And I didn't think that his term had an expiration, to be honest, but that's for after this meeting. But let's.
Okay, back to the committee report outs. I guess, should we go to restorative practices?
To online and cyberbullying, because I don't want to leave anybody out. But we have touched on restorative justice plenty now, so I'm gonna hand it over to Sylvia.
And I can be brief because I think so much of what we have said. Hi, everybody. So I do a couple of high level points. So first of all, thank you, Jennifer, for really kind of being the glue and for the work that we've been doing. And I did want to do a shout out to our commissioners, Zanita, and our community members, some of our community members that are here. We have just had a wonderful opportunity. We have met 2.5 times, and I'll explain the 0.5. And Jennifer is smiling, but context. So being able to serve in the position of chair really has allowed me to just really facilitate and serve. Everybody has brought their gifts and talents to a community of space. We really took our first session, our time together to build a community of practice. And I say this intentionally because the restorative justice work after January 6th, took on a whole new meaning with new leadership in Washington, D.C. You all know this. I am singing to the choir, but I wanted to be able to say that in this space. So our intent has not changed. Our work has not changed as commissioners and community members and state agency team members. But we had to take a deep breath when we came together for our second meeting, in our 0.5 meeting in January. So when we came together in January, what we realized was our mindset shifted. We had to take a deep breath. It was difficult because we found out that in the field, our community needed us even more. And so when we came together to kind of reset on our charge from the AG's office, it had nuanced, and we needed a chance to kind of breathe a little bit, be vulnerable, be open, share, talk, be a little bit sad, honest. And we needed to build that space so that we really could get some momentum moving forward. And we did. And we needed that space. So that was our 0.5 meeting. So we left that space stronger and more connected. So we came back together in our next meeting. So I wanted to be able to share that with you. Not to say that the 0.5 meeting wasn't a time in vain, but it was a time that was really important. So what we were able to do moving forward, we came back together, we reset in our next meeting, and Jennifer was able to update us on the bill, some additional legislation in Maryland around restorative justice work in our school districts. She was able to also give us some information outside the state of Maryland around legislation that connects to the work that Maryland's doing around restorative justice, give us some updates in regards to what was happening with crossover, with our current work with the commission, and how, where we were, how we did not make it to crossover, but the work, we had momentum and where we were going moving forward. What we decided as a committee is we looked at the three charges around, do we look at reporting? Do we look at training? Do we look at community discussions? We did revisit the forums that were happening across the state. I think there were 5 in the state of Maryland. I had the opportunity to attend the one back in October and kind of debriefed our committee and talked a little bit about what that forum looks like. And I won't bring that back up, but you know what those were. And so we talked a little bit about the one that was happening in Anne Arundel in early after January, talked about what that looks like and if we wanted to replicate that on a smaller scale. And so what the committee members decided to do is we wanted to look at the reporting. reporting charge with our prior commissioners. And what we decided to do is we're in the window of it now. We meet in 2 weeks. And what we have been doing is we decided to go back into the field, like many of our committees decided, as we wanted to look at the reporting side. And we wanted to find out from, I was about to say constituents, but our community members and our citizens, what do they do when they come across an incident of hate bias, and how are they reporting it? What's working well? What's not working well? And we meet, I think, in a week and a half. We're going to come back together, and then we're going to look at that data. We're going to look at the implications of what's working, what's not working well outside the law enforcement side, and if they have a reporting system at all. What do they do with it in the school system? We're going to use the school system on a small level, and we're going to look at health agencies, nonprofit agencies. We're going to look at the religious sectors. We're going to look at community-based organizations. There might even be some spaces where community members are mentioning that we may not have heard of, maybe some business practices, we don't know. And we're going to see what bubbles up. And then from those implications, it will give us some information then to look at the training side and see where we need to go there, because the 3 charges that were provided to us as a committee also provided an opportunity to say there might be an option to look at for training that we haven't even considered. So we're going to look at implications when we meet back together in about a week and a half or so. So that is where we are. So that is my report. Any questions for us? And Jennifer, did I miss anything?
I don't believe you missed anything. You had a chance to go over a bit of it before you even got to the official part.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
I was going to say, if there are no questions, then I will hand it off to Carissa Mattern, who is the chair of the Online and Cyberbullying Committee.
Oh man, I have to follow that act? Come on.
What's up? You're the last to go. Congrats.
Oh, there we go. Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Sylvia. My internet is not like super stable, so that's why I have my camera off, but please enjoy the picture of me and Mango. Not my horse, I have a different one. Anyway, hi, Carissa Mattern. The committee has been engaging in several different and interesting topics regarding cyberbullying and online hate, and we've been focusing on AI and defining what AI means. What does it mean? And it can mean in different things to different sectors, obviously, and especially considering what happened to the Baltimore County principal, who was the victim of the deep fake. So keeping all of that in mind as we do so. We've been looking at different curriculum options for teachers and parents to talk to their kids and students about cyberbullying and online hate. And we're also looking into online gaming, since that is a large group of individuals that, as we learned, this committee is full of nerds, and it's great. So great job, Jennifer, in getting all the nerds together. So anyway, in particular, we've been looking at the different statutory ways to address online hate, but because it's an online space, this can include anybody in the world. It's not just Marylanders. It's not like we can say this is subject to only Marylanders. Can't do that. So we've been talking about doxing and non-consensual or revenge porn, because that is increasing in the space as well. And recommending policies to different social media platforms and companies, and how to raise awareness around online hate, which brings me up to what we did in our last meeting. We welcomed a gaming streamer, Iona. She's known as Eona. It's EEOWNA. I'll put it in the chat if you're interested. She has a large following on Twitch and YouTube. She's won some awards on YouTube. So we thought that that would be an interesting conversation to have with her about her experiences with online hate as a member of the LGBTQ community. And she also identifies as a plus size woman. So there's a lot there that she could talk about. And she talked to us about her experiences that her, or lack thereof, that her cis white male partner experienced as a streamer as well. We had a really engaging conversation and had several points that were brought up that we hadn't actually considered before, like chat bots and how those are used to spread hate at a rapid rate. Like you can, an individual could buy a chat bot that is hundreds of messages that are spammed instantly at one time to a bunch of different streamers with a tag maybe like LGBTQ friendly or ally, etc. And since having the conversation with Iona brought us some significant insight, I've been thinking, or Jennifer and I have been thinking about other ways that we can bring different types of online communities into the conversation. So I'm very excited to say that I've solidified a well-known Maryland attorney, advocate, and podcaster that many of you may know, Rabia Chaudhry, who is going to come speak to us about her experiences with online hate. And she's also said a lot about being anti-hate on her social media as well. So I think that'll be an interesting conversation to hear from a different type of online community and someone who has knows Maryland too. That's a different side of things. Anyway, forgot to mention that even though Iona is a Brit, she's in the UK, it was very interesting because she told us that Twitch is primarily where she streams, and she did not know this, but Twitch is actually an American company. So the majority of the viewers are American. So even though she's a Brit, she's still experiencing what a lot of us are experiencing. And after hearing those speakers, I'm hoping that we will regroup and look at different policies with the different platforms, since they all have different ways of addressing hate. YouTube, it seems, is less lenient about the different ways that they address hate, but Twitch is very, very, they just have a lot of boundaries and a lot of policies that seem to be working fairly well. So that's primarily the updates. And I wanted to give a shout out to Jennifer for always being responsive and getting us all together, and we couldn't do it without you. And any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions? Thank you, Carissa. I do think that the strategies for combating hate online is one that is ripe for potential legislative recommendations, as we're starting to see some bills introduced in that area. So would love to hear how your conversations continue to evolve, and if you identify new legislative recommendations, or maybe have seen something over this past session that you think the commission should put its weight behind, or consider putting its weight behind. So thank you for your work. And just to sort of jump on the train of just thanking everyone, I mean, all the commission chairs, we know that it's requires some extra work on your part when we asked you to be chairs. And so thank you for agreeing to chair the groups and show leadership in this important work. And then, of course, Jennifer, thank you. You've heard your the commissioners give you a shout out for all that you're doing to keep this work going. And I just echo that, you know, I know that I and the AG can rely on you to keep this work going. And, you know, you work hard, and obviously it's reflected in all the positive feedback that you're getting. So thank you for that. I guess we are on to the next item in the agenda. And I guess it's also a good thing that we invited folks at a 2-hour limit, as opposed to the 1.5 hours we thought we'd need for today, because we are beyond the 1.5 hours we thought we'd need. So I have after committee updates, open discussion. We've done a lot of discussing, but I will open the floor back up to anyone who has something that they want to share, put before the commissioners, experiences, any other recommendations or feedback on what we have discussed so far. Anyone? I don't see hands. All right. Well, thank you all for a very robust discussion. I think a number of you may have some additional items to take up within your committees after this meeting, but you certainly are making some great progress to date. And one new item definitely coming out of this is this creation of a work group that is going to be focused of this question of how do we handle hate bias incidents in terms of who can receive those reports and how can we ensure that those reports are incorporated into our statewide accounting for hate activity. And so please stay tuned for an email from Jennifer inviting everyone to participate in that. And in the meantime, continue to do great work. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Have a great
Okay.
weekend.